Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Pup and Away podcast. My name is Stephanie. You may know me as Steph the Pro Dog Mom. I am a certified dog trainer, canine behaviorist, and canine nutritionist, and the very proud owner of Pup and Away in San Antonio, Texas, where we specialize in pet care with the behavioral edge. That's all kinds of socialization, boarding, training, nutrition stuff, you name it, we do it, but not grooming and not vet stuff. Today, I am joined by Matt Bryant, who also is known as the Texas Dog Father. Matt, you're located is it in Katy? Katy proper, outside
Actually,
of
we're
Katy?
in, we're in Cyprus now. So in
Cyprus.
Cyprus, just north of Katy, just a little bit, 30 minutes away from Houston.
Perfect. Yeah, you've moved around a couple of times, and I've kind of watched you grow and evolve and do all the things. So sometimes it's hard to keep track when I'm not in Houston myself, but in
Right.
Cyprus. Gotcha. So Matt, tell us a little bit about you and kind of what you specialize in and how you got started in the dog training world. I know that's a very loaded question given all the different things that you do, and we'll kind of unpack that as we go along. But yeah, how did you get started here?
Well, I tell you what, as I kind of look back on things, it took I had several lives before dog training, and it required all of that to be the kind of trainer that I am today. So, my personal story is that, I'm 57. I grew up in South Humble, Texas. Very, very poor. We lived in a tiny trailer way out in the woods. My avenue out of poverty and all of the kind of dysfunction that comes with it, which I think that helps me very much to understand broken dogs, is that I come from that environment myself.
Mm.
But my avenue out of the neighborhood was music. I actually learned to play guitar. I got in a band, and that the band rented a house, and that was the very first time I'd lived in a brick house, right?
You strike me as a band guy.
Yeah,
That
I
makes sense.
was. I used to have hair that went all the way down, right? Yeah, so that was my avenue out, and then when I reached the age of 26, I figured I better stop, enjoying my early retirement and get a real job. So I did that. I got a job as a forklift driver, and in 10 years, I was able to work myself up to the senior business analyst, and my territory was the Americas. I got to travel all over the world and work in supply chains. And what I learned there was, the back end of the business, the P&L, and then working with teams and everything that I did not realize I would be applying to entrepreneurship and starting
Yeah.
your own dog training business and growing that team. But I would not have had the skills to do that in what I'm doing now had I not had all that different background.
Mm.
But when I decided that I wanted to be a dog trainer was I had grown up being one of those kids. I was the dog kid of the neighborhood, and I would, pet sit and take care of everyone's cats and plants and so forth. And I just had a way about, communicating with animals, and it was innate. It wasn't anything conscious. It wasn't anything I thought of.
Hmm.
Kind of took it for granted. Now, oh my gosh, it's the root of my empathy towards dogs. But what I wanted to do after doing 35 startups in the corporate world, I wanted to do one for myself. And so I thought I was going to be really smart, and I found the best, most successful trainers out there, and I paid good money to follow them around their business, and I stayed in a hotel down the street, and I mirrored these people. Now it's called shadow training, right?
Hmm.
Back then it really wasn't a thing. But the mistake I made, the horrible mistake, was I picked successful trainers. However, they were shock collar trainers. And I
Mm.
really didn't know any better. I learned that method. I came back to Houston and started applying these techniques to my dogs. And
Hmm.
within weeks, I had thrown all of that in the garbage. I said, this was time and money wasted. This is horrible. And if these are the most successful trainers out there, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so my pendulum swung all the other way, and I realized, okay, that's not all that's out there. There's positive methods, and there's beneficial approaches that don't depend on, harsh techniques and pain and threats and all of this. I knew that had to be out there. Now, my problem was that I had no money for marketing.
Mm.
So positive training method dogs that did well with that kind of training, they weren't available to me. They were all being trained by other trainers who were more experienced and more successful in marketing. So I by necessity had to start working with aggressive dogs the other trainers didn't want to work with or were
Okay.
afraid to work with, or those techniques were unsuccessful. Two dogs
Yeah.
fighting in the house over food, clicker and a treat isn't going to help you in those kinds of moments. And I learned that very quickly. So what
Right.
I saw was this enormous gap, these dogs that fell through this huge crack in the middle where my heart won't allow harsh techniques. I don't feel they're effective, but the softer techniques were not effective in those moments, and I needed to find something else. And that's what pushed me into the areas that we work now. And
Very
so
cool.
that's how the dog father started, was out of seeing a problem and a need and not a good solution, and saying let's put some effort into figuring this out.
Yeah. What like around what time, like around what year was it that you were following these other positive punishment trainers? Because I feel like the dog training industry, the whole dog training world has definitely, that used to be very commonplace. And I think it definitely still is, unfortunately. But I think now positive reinforcement is definitely a little bit more well heard of, and that's something that pet parents are seeking. So around what time were you learning to become a dog trainer and learning from these shock collar trainers?
This was right around 2006, 2007,
Yeah, so
right?
that's still like that's recent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, this 2006 and 7, and I really didn't know what criteria to look for, so I just looked
Yeah.
for trainers that were well known, trainers that
Yeah.
were doing well. I thought if they're successful, then that's who I should pattern after, not
Absolutely.
realizing that, wow, you sell your soul in order to get that success, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't really realize that. And then in 2008, there was a huge recession. 2008 and 9 was tough. So
Hmm.
I focused at that point. I kind of put training on the back burners so that I could get some experience in that, not trying to be commercial with it, just growing my experience. And I shifted to, and this is how the dog father really took off. I shifted to pet sitting and things like that. So I knew I could make connections with difficult dogs. I didn't know
Hmm.
exactly how. I didn't have a scientific method for it, but I knew
Hmm.
I could go into their house and take care of them. So I literally I had no money. I took a van. I bought 500 business cards with magnetics on the back, and I stuck them all over my van and parked it in the first slot of the dog park first thing in the morning. So every single
Smart.
person that walked into that dog park, they saw my cards, and they could just pick it up and throw it in their pocket. They didn't have to write anything down or anything, and they
Yeah.
could just go. And I'd
I
put
love
out
that.
100 cards. At the end of the day, there'd be 25 cards gone, and I'd get 5 calls. So things happen fast.
Yeah.
And word of mouth took off from there. And it's then that I started learning the power of what I later learned was allomimesis. I had 4 dogs at that time. I had 2 Great Danes, a French Mastiff, and a giant Schnauzer.
You had a
500
giant
pounds.
schnauzer? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
giant schnauzer, yes. Uh, Baron von Doo, that's Scooby Doo's German brother. His name was Baron von Doo. But 500 pounds of dog love would greet me at the door. And when I started doing pet sitting and home boarding, these dogs would come and stay with us.
Hmm.
And they would go home, and the parents would say, "Oh my gosh, he's so much calmer," or "He's listening so much better." I hadn't done any training whatsoever, but just by virtue of living with my dogs and having that structure. And I think what I learned later on, I didn't really understand then, was it wasn't just that they were with 4 other calm, well behaved dogs, because they weren't always well behaved dogs, but these dogs functioned as a family.
Hmm.
And that's what made the difference. And that's what gave birth to the family language, was it's not just good enough to get your son with a bunch of other football players, but it's learning the sportsmanship. It's learning the tolerance. Imagine a kid from a foster home goes to a home, and he sees everyone sitting at the table and everyone's listening to each other while they eat dinner and no one's throwing food. It's more than just seeing people, it's seeing people function as a family. And
Hmm.
when dogs see other dogs function with that level of tolerance and cooperation, they have an innate instinctual urge to match those behaviors. That's when I learned to capture and to mark and reward. So every time I saw them begin to mirror those behaviors or match their energy levels, I could mark and reward it, and we could make real progress. We could desensitize to certain stimulus. We could counter condition. I didn't know to speak in those terms. I didn't really understand the science behind that at the time. I just knew what I was seeing and it was working.
Yeah.
Later on, I filled in the gaps with all of the science. And that's how we really started refining, was watching the influence that my dogs had, when it was a beneficial influence, when it was not. That's when I started learning social facilitation, how not to just let things unfold, but actually create scenarios with specific learning points for the other dog. And that's how those original 4 dogs have kind of bloomed into the compassion pack that we have now.
Ooh, I don't think I've heard you guys use that term yet, the compassion pack. I love that.
Compassion pack.
I will,
Yes.
we'll definitely touch on them soon because they are a huge, I think, like a big part of what you guys do at the Texas Dog Father. And
Yes.
I think just to kind of clarify for anyone listening, can you tell us the types of dogs that I mean, I know you work with all different types of dogs, but you kind of mentioned a little while ago, like it was the aggressive dogs that kind of fell in the cracks of using this, we don't want to use these hard aversive punishment techniques because that could actually make aggressive tendencies worse. But sometimes the softer positive reinforcement things, like when we talk about positive reinforcement, we're trying to reward behaviors that we like. And when we have a dog that's kind of a little bit more in the aggressive tendency, there's a lot of behaviors that we don't like. So how do we get rid of those, right? And not just focus on building the behaviors that we like, but also getting rid of the ones that we don't. So can you just kind of clarify, like, what kind of dogs do you guys specialize in at the Texas Dog Father?
What we specialize in are dogs that are behaviorally challenged by their environment, right? So we no longer really talk in terms of this is an aggressive dog or not aggressive dog, because we recognize how much environment plays into that. And a dog that may be aggressive and reactive in an apartment environment may never run into those stimuluses or trigger that, and see, people would say, well, he's not aggressive at all in a home environment or in a different environment. So
Right.
we learn to to understand it's a triangulation between the dog's experiential traumas, their current environment, and the relationships that they have. So we learn to cue in on that. But the dogs that we help are dogs that almost always it's some kind of fear or insecurity. The actual behaviors are really overlapping, but when you get down to the root of it, it's always they missed a period of development, that 6 week to 12-week period where they're learning not only tactile changes and things like this, but fear management, way more than bite inhibition, but cooperative play versus competitive play. When they miss those windows of development, and they don't have an opportunity to make it up because they then experience some kind of experiential trauma. I was trying to be social, but I don't have good skills. This dog reacted back. I wasn't expecting that. Now I'm ready and open for business just in case, right? And then that coping mechanism for that lack of development then becomes habitualized. It becomes supported and reinforced. Every time I put on a show, the scary thing goes away. Aha, I'm going to do. So there's conditioning. So there's almost always, we missed a development window. We've had some experiential trauma, and now we've rehearsed our coping mechanism to where it's hard. And I find that a lot of trainers will come in and they'll try to extinguish the outcome of the coping mechanism, but never really trace down to the root. And so that's why there's iffy results at best, right?
Right.
And I am not only a huge advocate of Lima, I'm also a huge advocate of being synopraxic. This is another level of not only using positive methods, but only if it's benefiting the dog. For instance,
Right.
I don't want to condition this dog to start trusting someone that continuously abuses them, right? So I feel it's my duty to the dog to look at the larger thing. And there's some things in the environment where, yeah, we can desensitize to certain stimulus, but if the household is constantly in tension and everyone's always yelling, the dog is gonna make alignments, and he's not gonna like dad, and he's gonna like mom, and so I can't really do the work I need to with him until we do work in the environment. So it's grown from the types of dogs that we work with to now it's actually very predictable archetypes of people as well, and how that all ties together.
And that was something that I started just recently learning from you, because you've been amazing and gracious in allowing not just me, but also some of my team to come to you and to learn a little bit about what you guys do. And even though we can't completely replicate that at Pup Pup, still the concepts are still there. And when it comes to dog training, and I guess more behavior, right? Behavior modification, there's so many things involved. But I get asked the question often of like, how do I get my dog to stop doing this? And I'm like, first of all, it's a dog behavior, so congrats, you have a dog. But
Right.
there's so many things that go into that, right? Like you mentioned, it's the relationship between the dog and the people. It's the relationship between the people in the house towards the other people in the house, the environment. For me, something that I look very highly into is the biological needs, right? The nutrition. Is your dog's body just already in a state of inflammation? What is that nervous system looking like? And another thing that you had just mentioned too was, those life stages are super important. One thing that I've really kind of tapped into within this past year or so is just really focusing on the adolescent brain and how much adolescence is just a freaking wild ride. And I think
In
it's
any
fantastic.
species.
Is what's what?
In any species.
In any species, absolutely. I mean, think
That's
about
right.
ourselves, right? When we were teenagers,
Yeah.
and I'm so happy that puppyhood got, its own recognition to the point where puppy classes really became a thing not too long ago, right? But I really think it's time for the adolescent brain or the adolescent stage to also get its recognition, because I like to tell my clients what you do in puppy preschool and you're early on before 4-ish months of age is you're giving your dog the building blocks to get through adolescence. And adolescence is really when your dog is performing and experimenting with those coping mechanisms, and then through practicing them. And of course, as stupid humans, we're always like, oh, it's just a growl, let's keep pushing him to meet this person. We're ignoring the growling, which now is your dog is now snapping and biting, and of course that always gets our attention. So those things are practiced and reinforced, and now we have not an aggressive dog, but a dog who practices aggressive behaviors.
Right. Yeah.
So what I love,
You're exactly right.
cool, we're all right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys definitely deal with a different caliber of dog. I kind of jokingly and kind of, but lovingly say that you guys sometimes deal with the mauled, the maid dogs, dogs who sometimes come to you guys for kind of those last, almost like sometimes you're their last resort.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's it's a two-edged sword, because what we found ourselves in is oftentimes, because we're not massive marketers, we work mostly through relationships and referrals and so forth, word of mouth, that by the time people find us, they've already been to 2 or 3 trainers.
Right.
They've seen the shock collars, and then they went and they got the medications, and then they had someone come over that wasn't even able to get a collar on the dog and so forth. And so they're coming to me and going, all right, this is it. If this doesn't work, we're putting him down. And I'm like, oh. So
The
it's
pressure.
the dog's life at stake, right?
Yeah.
And someone in the house inevitably has already given up, right? And then the dog is feeling all of this uncertainty, so it's just exacerbated things. So yeah, it's high stakes, and even if it's not that dog's life, it's that these 2 dogs are fighting, and if we can't sort this out, one of them loses their home, right?
Right.
Or there's 2 people that want to move in together. They each have dogs that are squabbling. They're not going to get to start their life until that's sorted out. And you don't want to start off by going, one of you has to get rid of your dog. Or
Right.
just, there's a baby coming in the house. High stakes. And so, yeah, I'll be honest with you. It's almost ruined me, because teaching Fifi how not to make pee-pees on the carpet just don't cut it for me anymore. I need that drive of, this is life or death. I can't mess this up. And it's much more than just the dog here. It's helping the people learn how not to instantly reverse all of this, right? They have to make behavioral changes. And so I've really had to spend time with a really good friend of mine, psychologist, to help me understand techniques to go into a house and tell another man coming into his house, you can't yell at your dog anymore. And by the way, do you see why your daughter is sitting over there like that? Imagine the effect you're having on the whole household. And then I still have to get paid at the end of all of that. That
Manage
was,
it very gently in the right way.
yeah, exactly. Helping them see and arrive at the conclusions rather than telling them, you've got to stop that, which actually is in perfect alignment with the kind of training we do with dogs. It's
Yeah.
that I've learned that it's just an extension of that. And I have become infinitely times better trainer by learning and taking all of that in consideration. It takes something very challenging with iffy results with the dog, and all of a sudden, all of the dog part is effortless now that we've made these changes. And sometimes people just don't know any better. They just needed to hear the information and see. They needed to see a big guy not rushing straight to no, but actually, let's do that again, and let me show you what you should have done, sweet baby. Good
Yeah.
job, right?
Yeah.
Every correction ending in a praise of the right behavior, never mad, never loud, never harsh, never punitive. These are things we say trying to be sticky so that the next time that situation comes up, they'll remember, that's not what Matt said to do. Do this instead. Good job.
Yeah. You're definitely a breath of fresh air in the dog training world. I remember when I first got, okay, so my first experience with in the dog training world is me learning was in 2009-ish, and I tried working with hunting dogs. So I got my experience doing, the shock collars, the ear pinching, being outdoors and all that great stuff. I very quickly realized that dog training is not for me. And at that point, the industry was very male dominant with, people using all of these aversive methods. And it wasn't until I moved to Houston, worked at Peace Loving Dogs, and then I actually found that, dog training can have this feminine aspect and fun aspect of it too, with, treats and praise and puppies, and not just, aversive stimulus
Right.
and things like that. So you are a nice breath of fresh air because you are a man, and I know that no one can really tell, but you're tall, and you're a big guy, in
Yeah.
the best way possible. Big teddy bear is what I like to say. But you don't come into these environments with that very big masculine energy, and there's pros and cons to both feminine and masculine energy for sure in the dog training industry. But you come in it with the sense of, that compassion and that empathy that I think a lot of men don't have. So yeah, you're a breath of fresh air.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I have to tell you, being a white man, middle aged, it's hard. It's like sometimes we're the most hated, group on the planet. And when someone looks at me and hears I'm a trainer, I'm automatically thrown in that category. It's just assumed that I'm going to be harsh, or I'm going to be, you got to be the boss, right?
Yeah.
And it does take a bit of just listen to what I'm saying. Just
Yeah.
watch how it works, right? It has been a bit of a battle, and it's hard. But I can tell you this: in the last few years, probably 5 years, I felt a change. I felt an acceptance, right? I felt people willing to watch and learn and listen and go, oh, that's not at all what I thought it was, right? And I think people are also learning that, and that's why I'm loving Lima. It didn't always exist, and Lima kind of gives us all a framework to work within. So when the need arises for us to step out of positive, what's the next step, and then how do we spring right back to it again, right? That really didn't exist for many years. I operated with that. I called it my empathy retractable. I could get out there a little bit and retract myself
Come
right
back
back
in.
in, right? But now there's a framework, and I think that helps. And some people that I really respect that are very active in the IAABC, right? I hear them now and see videos of them doing techniques that are almost identical to what I was doing way back then, and we just arrived from different ways at the same place. Incredibly validating for me, and I love that because that means that dogs that were not getting help in the past are getting it now.
Absolutely. And for everyone who's listening, what is LIMA? LIMA is least intrusive, minimally aversive, and it's a whole scale that trainers go through when we're trying to find the techniques that we are working with depending on the dog. So we start with the least intrusive, minimally aversive, try to give that a shot. And if that doesn't work, depending on the circumstances, maybe we do move up to harsher methods. There's a lot of variables that go into that too, starting to consider, are there management techniques that we can be putting in work instead? Are there, is this a life and death situation? Is this the last resort sort of thing? All of those are guiding principles within the LIMA framework. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that for some people, because most of our listeners are pet parents, so they're like, what the heck is Lima
Ah,
bean?
yeah.
Um,
So you know what? A good example of this is a dog that's, and we never go towards harshness. So even if we go outside of only positive, and maybe it's to positive punishment, right? Or something like that, that's just one step away. It's one exit on the Lima ramps. But what we do to even soften that is that's why we've developed the two other major principles of the family language, and that is the development of relationship. The nerd terms would be cross species allo parenting, and it's like the stories you see on Dodo where a cat adopts baby possums, or a Labrador raises some cheetah cubs. It's about creating a parent-child relationship. This is also something we borrowed from attachment theory and child psychology, is that when I have learned from observing just tons and tons of puppies and parents and their aunts and how they function as a family, when raising puppies as a family, I realized that it's the function of the entire pack, not just mom, right? And that I can step in and mimic many of those things. And that dog, even as an adult dog, kind of reverts back to puppyhood and plugs back in. Then I don't have to fight for his attention. He's looking to me for guidance because I have conducted myself in a way that triggers his instincts that this is a parent. And the most important part of that is what we call not that, this instead. If I have to tell you don't do that, that was already outside of positive because I'm telling you
yeah.
don't do that. But we're in an apartment and we got to get down an elevator. And so I don't have many weeks to slowly counter condition and desensitize, because
Right.
at 10 o'clock, you got to take a shit. I got to get you downstairs, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to take on this gauntlet that we are not prepared for. So the way we fast track that is we build a parent-child relationship so that I follow my parent anywhere and I can stay quiet while they manage the scary things. A whole batch of instincts is already there that we can call on if we have that relationship. And the only way to do that, you can't earn it with treats and you can't kick them into confidence. You have to conduct yourself with them the other 23 hours of the day that gets you voted into office.
Right.
Then you can guide them through things. Then the second part that is so different than what I was doing before with strictly positive training is the observational learning. And that is to actually have a group of dogs. Ratios are important. If you have one subject dog, you need at least 3 or 4 for it to be a group or an audience effect. And then I can bond them together with 1 or 2. Then I can put these dogs in the situation that is scaring this one, and they get to observe behaviors from dogs they're already bonded with. For instance, we may have a fence reactivity issue. This dog goes crazy at the fence because on 3 sides of their backyard, there's other dogs doing the same thing. And then it's become a problem to where now when they go out the front door, they're just looking for trouble, right? So we've got to start changing those perceptions. What I'll do is have them stay at my place for a little while. I'll have them make friends with several of my pack that are very neutral at the fence. Once they've made that connection, then I can bring that stimulus. We socially facilitate. We create that moment where there's a crazy dog on the other side of the fence going batshit lunatic. And then our subject dog is in the middle of the field watching 4 of my dogs be happy and non-responsive at all. He sees that and begins to de-escalate just a tiny bit. Good job. Now, someone he's voted into office as the parent, that praise is the highest value treat you can imagine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I've chosen the high value treat by earning it. I give him feedback there, and then we start working on our proximities. We get our thresholds. We work closer and closer until all of our dogs are just sniffing around while this dog is over here still reacting. We've moved this forward by using observation learning and spending some time with relationship. In 3 sessions, we've made tremendous progress instead of just incremental progress with me and a treat and trying to distract and so forth. That's how we can take dogs that are in apartments and got to get used. Their baseline environment is already over their threshold. They
Right.
hear knocking around upstairs, downstairs. They got to go down a hallway and then an elevator. So tough for them. We can make fast progress in just a few days because their challenges aren't going away. And we
Right.
can only manage them so much. And that's what the family language does for us. It accelerates things by, I think, creating a much more natural learning environment. I have friends that I'm watching and learning from, and the one that runs the whole show, right? Not the pack leader, not the boss, the parent is
Mm-hmm.
teaching me, not that, this instead, good job. Now my confidence goes up because either I get it right and I get praised, or just before I get it wrong, I get shown what the right thing is and praised. So every learning point ends in a praise of the right behavior. Now you're conditioning in a fast track. That's the essence of the family language.
Yeah. And I think you and I joke about this often, or I think I joke about this with Michelle. So, Michelle, for the listeners who don't know, is one of my best friends and now works for Matt and has been working with you
10
almost
years.
10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I did 10 years. Yeah.
And so when I first found you, or when I first was introduced to you, right? I think Michelle and I were introduced to you through Anna, who was our boss at the time. I did fall into the misconceptions of here is a middle-aged white guy, and I was very turned off by some of your methods, not gonna lie, and you know this. But it was really the family language that showed me that there was a different side, obviously, to your training, and obviously is something that I have definitely have taken into in my style of training as well. That I use
Love that.
slightly different language as to how I introduce it to my clients. I like to tell them, like when I was growing up, I got lots of opportunities to do things as a teenager. I was on dance team. I got to go out on the weekends. I got to have fun, but I had expectations that I was expected to uphold. I had to keep my bathroom and my bedroom clean. I had to keep, grades up. I had to have, perfect attendance at school, all of those different things. And when it comes to our dogs, I think women especially, we are really easy to let our dogs kind of get away with anything because they're so cute, right?
Mhm.
But having those opportunities to step in as a leader for your dogs is definitely super important. Something that I learned from your model. How are some ways that pet parents, can be implementing those opportunities at home? Obviously you mentioned that at the ranch, there's a whole pack of dogs that you guys utilize. What are maybe some simple things that pet parents can do at home to kind of be voted into office?
Fantastic question. I love that. So every dog is a little bit different,
Of
and
course.
what they value in a parent is a little bit different. If I have 5 dogs in my house, I have to be ambidextrous, and there's 5 different parenting skills. What I mean by that is I have to consistently show up for Sweet Pea and be her defender, not let her get pushed to the back, not let her get pushed away from the water bowl. So in normal everyday situations, I have a parent-child connection with individuals, but I'm parenting a group as well.
Right.
So this guy is spun up out of control. We call him Crazy Brains. What he can trust me to do is show him the boundaries that he's not seeing in a kind and clear way. So I keep him out of trouble. He gets to have the freedom of the house, and every time he starts to, chew on pillows, we remind him with our, leave its and so forth. But then Sweet Pea needs to know, baby, you can come over and be on the couch. Come on over here. Then I'm going to be the bringer of structure. The best way to eliminate competition in a home is to have a higher standard of behavior that they all have to attend to. And it could be as simple as at the back door, there's assigned squares. You sit on this square of the tile, you sit on this square of the tile. Then they're not worrying about who goes out first and turning around and stopping, or who's going to squeeze through, or wiggling until no one is, out of. But we bring some structure. When you bring structure in a kind and instructive way to the front door, the back fence, the front window, toys, dinner time, yours and theirs, beds, theirs and yours, and leisure time. When you bring structure in a kind way to those things, you were voted into office, because every event of potential competition is resolved with your instruction. And always have an audience effect. So if I have a dog that's over the top and I'm parenting him, it lets this one over here that's not quite so tolerant say, I don't have to jump on your head and teach you what you're doing wrong. Matt's got it. So it's a gift to that dog that's really a control freak. Everyone goes, that's the dominant one. No, it's just an insecure control freak. And I'm letting her off the hook by saying, I'll parent Crazy Brains, sweetheart. You don't have to. And then I actually praise her for doing nothing. And she goes, shit, I can do nothing all day. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would say, look at your dog. Is he asking for guidance because he's fearful? Is he needing guidance because he's hyper excited and over the top, and that's his coping mechanism, right? Or do you have a dog that is reactive because there's been some trauma? And then I have specific conversations. For instance, if I have a fearful dog that shows up, I don't have the luxury of spending 2 weeks with that dog just earning trust. I've got to get on the other side of trust fast. So I will take this dog into my group of dogs, knowing that they're going to rush up and try to sniff. And then I make a big show of back away. Don't come up on her like that. And what that tells that dog is, wow, he's looking out for me. And he's doing it without being loud or harsh. And everyone listens to him. Now she can stay. It's called the safe base effect. I'm creating a safe base where wherever I am, she can make day trips out and sniff a butt and then come back and check in, right? So now we can start taking on those thresholds that she had before. And sometimes we find those have moved just because of that safe base effect. So I would say, look at your babies in the house and look at what they're needing. Oh, well, she's just insecure. Well, then she's needing some confidence building and some guidance, some protection, a safe base, right? Or, wow, he's just spun up, he's just crazy. Actually, I'll bet there's some anxieties that he's coping with, and he's using that hyper-excitedness to cope with that. And sometimes it's just, tell me what to do, right? I don't know what to do. The biggest mistake that I see, and this is what I deal with most often, and it took me a while to really understand this because it's not naturally my nature, but it's the over-nurturing moms. It's when we have some kind of emotional thing, either you're like I was when I was young, or you're this, or you got hit by a car and I've nursed you to recovery. There's all kinds of reasons why we make emotional attachments that block us from seeing what real parenting is. So sometimes what we do is when you give love to a dog just because it exists, you can actually destabilize that dog. They begin to become entitled. They begin to become aloof to anyone who's not doing that, and then reactive. They can become overprotective of oh, he just loves me. Well, we've made him neurotic, and he doesn't want to lose that plug-in. So what I tell people is, people that are natural over-nurturers, they're always being told, stop babying your dog. You can't do that. And I say that's bullshit. You can do all of that. You've just got to have structure, balance it out.
Right.
So if you truly want to indulge your dog, indulge it in learning, indulge it in growth. And sometimes that's a hard thing. It's just like, teaching your kid to go potty on the toilet. No, you got to sit here and we're not going to move. And I know you're kind of scared. You work through it, right? So you still have to send your kid to school when there's a bully in the middle school hallway. So we have to take on those challenges. We just do it with baby steps and graduated exposure and the relationship. And it is by virtue of doing that that you get voted into office. So you don't have to stop over nurturing. You just have to choose your times. When they've done something good, something difficult, I opened the front door, you sat and waited, even though there's a school bus right there and you didn't go through. Now I'm going to lavish you with some crazy party love. But if I, but see, now you've reinforced something. It was your impulse control. It was your listening to me that earned you this love and your secure spot in our pack. But if I just come and indulge that on you, well, then I'm the pack leader and I don't listen to you in the backyard anymore. We rob ourselves of the influence we need to guide them through the, and we also rob them of autonomy because they're never able to then do this on their own. I can be like this, but only if mom is right there and I can plug
Yeah.
in for that false sense of empowerment. So
Yeah.
decoupling that and kind of creating a new, more healthy relationship of influence is the key for the dog and for the parent. This usually is the mom. This is the center person of the house, the main caregiver. She's being taken advantage by everyone, including the dog. And the dog watches this too, right? So
Yeah.
that's how we got to get the kids involved with some caregiving and have them learn the skills of being a parent instead of just a bully. And we have to get dad to tone things down and we have to help mom build some structure. Don't feel bad about who you are and how you love your dog. But let's use that love as your superpower and let's expand it to teaching and training and growth.
I love that. Yeah, one of early on, I guess more like in the middle time, right? So after I started to learn to like you a little bit and I spent more time with you, again, you were very gracious and you let me take Sully, who's snoozing in the background, who's 15 now, very short of 16. He turned 16 in October. I know, I'm very proud of him. But Sully grew up in the doggy daycare world, right? When I got him, I don't know if I was already working in a doggy daycare, but he just kind of grew up in doggy daycares, right? And me being fresh into the industry, I didn't know much about group management, still kind of learning all of that. So he definitely took on the role of being the fun police in those daycares. And it wasn't until I worked with you that I started to realize like how much my lack of involvement, my lack in those play group managements made Sully think, well, shoot, lady, if you're not going to do it, then I got to step up and I got to do it. So then that's when all those things started to be formed. And then, of course, they were reinforced, kind of maybe a little bit on accident by me, too, because I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. You took care of that for me. And
Right,
not
right.
realizing that I was giving him this job slash because it wasn't my job, he was just taking it. And that was one thing that you really kind of helped me to see is like dogs will take on jobs when we don't want them to because of maybe our lack of leadership in certain situations. And when we start to step up for our dogs in different ways for every different dog, right? You very quickly just see them say like, Jesus, take the wheel. Like, thank
Yeah,
God
yeah,
that you did that
yeah,
for me. And it
yeah,
took me having to, I remember that one specific day, it was you, me, and Michelle with Sully out in the group. And I was scared as hell because he's a little small schnauzer in there with your big ass group of big ass
yeah,
dogs. And I was
yeah.
like, he's going to be an asshole. He's going to get himself eaten because he's going to go up to the wrong dog. And I, put trust in you, and you definitely showed me a very interesting way. And not gonna lie, sometimes it is hard to implement those things in everyday life. As a dog trainer and as a owner, I see how I could be stepping up a little bit more right now. But it really was telling for me when I saw how I accidentally gave Sully a role that most likely he didn't want to take but felt like he needed to, and
Right.
how very quickly he gave it back to me once I showed him that I could handle it.
I love that you saw that. It's something that so few people get to see is trying this a different way because in my mind you come from a rescue. No one's ever going to tell you no again, right? You have the run of the place, and that can be so overwhelming, right? And to give them specific guidance is kindness. Not you're wrong, bad, no, not that's not kindness, but saying you almost jumped on top of this dog's head and he's laying down. Let me show you what you should have done instead. So we
Yeah.
take you around to the butt and then you sniff it. Good job. And then we go over to the head and you sniff the ear. Good job. And then we move away.
Yeah.
And you stack that up and you show, here's what you should have done instead. That's the growth and the kindness, but it's the involvement. That's how we get voted in as parent, and that's how they learn. When we let them find it out on their own, or even worse, he go, oh, there's my little alpha coming out. When actually, no, it's an insecure dog
Yes,
acting out with an overcompensation that's not healthy, and then it
absolutely.
becomes his personality after a while. And you're right. The instant we say, you know what, I'm sorry, you're not a natural leader. You just want to come and hang out. Here's the beauty of dogs. They see the gap in our social structure. So if there's a gap in our house, for the sake of the pack, they will try to fill that role, even if they're no good at it. And that's why the instant they see someone taking over and parenting the puppy, cool. All of a sudden he's good with the puppy. That's
Yeah.
because she's glad you're taking care of it. Now your resident dog can actually enjoy the puppy being there instead of going, oh, I'm a parent and nobody's really parented me. Of course, they don't articulate all that, but that is the anxiety welling up, right?
Yeah.
And to have those demonstrations, those specific conversations, as a trainer matures in this way of thinking, they begin to literally think in terms of conversations. What would I say to a 5-year-old boy? I'd say, you go out and play in that field. I'm watching. I'm not going to let anyone bully you. You go out there and play. You deserve to. If you don't want to, fine, come on back. But you can have that exact same conversation with your dog. You just have to act it out. It's in demonstrations. And the way we demonstrate it, the nerd term is, we socially facilitate it, right? And the way we attach it to their environment that they've already had other attachments to, such as that fence line where there's always an asshole dog that we walk by, we can change how they feel about that with consistent parenting through there until that becomes the new norm, right?
Yeah.
The beauty is when you have a dog that can get to that and you parent in that way, that dog is now able to pay it forward. That dog is now able to be a social model for another dog. That's why I love when I see people that have 3 or 4 dogs in the house and they want to foster. And I come over to work with that foster and I go, let's get our house in order first, right? Because your dogs are being affected heavily by this new one coming in. You're not doing this one any favors. Let's get our babies in line, and then they become a rehabilitation factory of displaying family-like cooperations with and then you all of a sudden have influence in your house. You're not at the mercy of whatever may happen. You're not buffeted by your environment. You're the one bringing that to the environment. As you go, they will go.
I love that. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that you're saying, and I keep thinking of a very particular client that I've worked with just recently. She started off in my puppy preschool, and her dog was always pretty shy, pretty aloof. I could tell that he was going to be, it's a little bit in his nature to kind of be a little bit shy and have the tendencies to have reactive behaviors. So luckily in puppy preschool, he gained confidence. He made friends. Mom was very excited. Then we hit teenagerhood and we regressed a little bit. And one of my favorite things, she's one of my favorite clients right now. One of my favorite things to do with her is just to kind of show her in all these different ways, like small ways that she can show up for her dog. Whether it's just simply how she's holding the leash, how she's using her body to block certain things, but also another thing that I think I just recently learned from you when I took my 2 trainers to you just recently is giving our dogs the opportunity to make a decision so that they can prove to you that they have done some learning. And it's a very scary step, I think, for any trainer to do also, but let alone a pet parent to do, because so many pet parents are so quick to especially for this dog specifically, I'm thinking about her in a social situation. She kept cutting off every single interaction. I was like, you got to allow a little bit of something, so then that way, and I'm going to show you when to step in and how to step in, not crazy, but cool and confidently. And that really started to make some shifts in this dog's behavior. And one conversation that her and I had just recently too was how much her past dog was very reactive, and she can now see that now that her new puppy is kind of starting to show some signs of reactivity, that it's like a floodgate, bringing all of those insecurities to mom. And I'm like, okay, we got to unpack that too, because what you bring to the table is something that's definitely affecting this relationship. And so the more that we do these things, the more that your dog's going to realize, okay, mom's got it, and then put trust in you. And then the more that you see that he's got it too and he's doing better, you're going to have trust in him. And then we just see the trust between the two of you guys just really start to grow. And now we're just both more confident and comfortable in the scenarios that you are in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Fantastic coaching, because that's 100% true. There's a couple of things that you mentioned that really got my attention. One is the autonomy training. We call it autonomy training. At first, we're dealing with your current state, right? You have trauma, we've got to do some damage control. You've missed development, we got to do some catching up, right? You have conditioned an unhealthy coping mechanism. We've got to do some counter conditioning. So we've got to address all of that and then bring it back around, attach it to the relationship and then the environment. Now, doing that at a puppy level, adolescent level, adult level, it's just like a kid with their math tables. At a certain time, you're just doing arithmetic, right? Plus, minus, maybe some long division, right? Eventually, you're getting into algebra, right? And then you may push on into geometry and something. But here's the thing. If we just do our puppy training and stomp, they've only learned the puppy version of impulse control. So as that dog goes into adolescence, we have to increase the behavioral expectations in the home. And I don't mean now I need you to jump through hoops before you go out the door. No, what I do mean is you need to start assuming control of yourself. So as before, I gave you a hand signal and the verbal, right? Sit and wait. Now I want to just open the door and have you sit and wait, and I praise you for making the right choice. It may only be for a second at first, but we've got to start working ourselves out of a job in order to create that autonomy. Otherwise, you're always dependent on that high level of structure, right? And then you start to use, because you're no longer a puppy, you're wanting to take on a more adult role. But if we don't ask and provide for that more adult role to be a higher level of self-control, right? So we have to ask more of our dogs as they rise through their age. And I think that's a lot of the trouble we get to with adolescence. Sometimes we're expecting adult behaviors, or we're still tolerating and excusing puppy behaviors. And they look for a different level of parenting. It's no longer mimicry. Right? I see you do this, I do this. Now it's studying and observing and deciding where they want to be in that world. So they are going to challenge their parents sometimes, and we have to calmly bring them back around. I know, sweet baby, but I'm still mom. I'm still dad, right? So this is where we use what we call patient insistence. Never mad, never loud, never harsh, never punitive, but unbending on the expectation. If it takes us 3 minutes to go out this door, we're going to have you, we're going to have you wait and not just look through my legs trying to get out and still sitting, but actually when you go, there it is, baby. I'm looking for you to make the right choice, and I'm insisting that you make the right choice, not from threats, not from bribes, and not from punishments, but just because dad's asked you and we're really not doing any different. Now, hopefully I've been a good enough dad to where that is the motivation and the reward. If not, then I need to work on relationship before I can ask for that. But I think changing and adapting our parenting from puppy to adolescent is necessary. The next big one is when we get into multi-dog, right? That's a whole nother level of parenting and another level of running for office. The beauty is usually there's a couple of dogs that you can say, watch how they love me, right? That's how you should love me too, right? And then parent them through that. But I think you're right on the money with that advice you're giving.
Cool. Yay. I got some validation from Matt Bryant. Love that.
Yeah.
I think a couple more questions, because I know we're getting close to our time, but tell us a little bit about your compassion crew. Is that what you called them?
Yes, so for a long time they were the Pay It Forward pack, and just recently I think I like Compassion Pack a little bit better.
Compassion Pack, okay.
Compassion Pack. Now what they do is well, it's more than we couldn't do what we do without them. They are what we do. We're the supporting crew around it. I have a group of 15 dogs right now, and they're kind of divided into teams and sub teams. There's the soft pack, which I can completely trust around kids and any single other dog or parents or anything. And then there are what we call the rabble rousers, and they're a little less tolerant. And we don't extinguish those behaviors or refine those behaviors because our subject dogs coming in need to not only learn how to be cooperative, but how to learn social tolerance with a dog that's maybe not so great around the water bowl. Learn social restraint around a dog that might snap back if they come to sniff its butt. So we have to have dogs that fill all of those roles for us. So we have the soft pack and the rabble rousers. Then we have special teams, dogs that can go on field trips with us and serve as social models as we walk through a PetSmart or we are going around Memorial Park or so forth. So we'll often have dogs come and stay with us for a while. We'll find who they gravitate to in the pack, and then we can have those walking. If we have a leash reactive dog, we might put 3 of our dogs, one in front, one on each side, so that they're enveloped in calm friendship as we engage those stimuluses, right? We literally change the environment, but we're still using the same thresholds and proximities and intensity of stimulus, right? But the biggest thing that our pack does for us is they help me with building my relationship with the new dogs coming in. We bring a new dog, and this is part of our assessment. We put them on our social scale, social confidence, social competence, social tolerance, and social restraint. And we find where they are with different archetypes of dogs, dogs that are very forward, dogs that are fearful, which can be they can become targets for
yeah.
dogs that are insecure and want to show everyone else. See, I can beat up somebody, right?
Yeah.
So
Schoolyard bully.
exactly. And so they help us have conversations. Sometimes I'm backing my dogs away and making a big show of it because I'm building trust. Other times, I'm wanting my dogs to just pack up around us and go for a walk because we just need to build up, we need to put in some miles in a social context until they're no longer having that spike of novelty, and now they're starting to pay attention, and when the other dogs lay down, they feel the urge to lay down. Now we're facilitating that mirroring and so forth. And the social pack, they help us in so many ways. I don't know how we would do what we do without it. The family language, principle number 1 is the parent-child relationship. We call this cross-species allo-parenting. The geek terms that we use are epimiletics and epimiletics, but it's building that parent-child relationship, not just loving and indulging, and certainly not being the boss or the pack leader, but actively teaching in a kind and instructive way. That's the inspiration to do the things we're asking and the reward for having done it. The other pillar is all the stuff that we all know that all good dog trainers adhere to. Operant conditioning, counter conditioning, desensitization, mindfulness of thresholds and your proximities and your intensities of stimulus, all the things we use to facilitate behavioral change. And then the third pillar is the social context, and that's the pack. They serve as both observational learning opportunities, they serve as social models, they help us with desensitization, they split the attention. Even when we're introducing 2 dogs that have previously fought and been kept separated, we do that in the context of the pack because it creates a group date instead of a blind date, so to speak. So with ratios, it helps to take the pressure off of that intensity. So the pack is who have taught us what we do, and we're now into our 3rd pack, and they're starting to get pretty old. So we're having to find new recruits to come in to keep things lively and to learn from the rest of the pack how to function as a family, not just a group, a loose daycare, right, where they all come from different environments. Even ones that come the same dogs every week, they learn to love each other, but they live different worlds. These dogs live together, eat together, breathe together, they work together. Everything is facilitated to create that magic of family displays.
Love that. That's so cool. Yeah, your pack is definitely something that is not the secret sauce, but a very special ingredient to what you guys do.
Huge.
And I've tried, again, because of our last trip that we took over with me and my 2 trainers, I've tried to kind of make those archetypes for my daycare dogs and utilize those kiddos whenever we're trying to orient or, temperament test a new dog into the group. Can you handle the soft kiddos? Can you handle the teenager kiddos?
Right.
And, unlike, I guess kind of like, but also unlike, we obviously have a turnover, right? Because clients unfortunately move away and do different things like that. So it's important that we're keeping things well balanced within the daycare and not just always picking, the dogs that are, just laying around in the corner because, dogs are there to have fun.
That's right. That's right.
Matt, how can people find out more about you or get more information if they're interested in working with you guys?
Well, I'd say look at our website, www.thedogfather.com. Yeah. But look us up on the website. We also have a Facebook page. The Facebook page goes all the way back to the early 2000s, right? So you can see a huge history of all the dogs and the rescue groups and customers we've worked with. We also have an Instagram page. I don't go on Instagram very much, but it's linked with our Facebook. But honestly, I'd say the best way to get to know what we do is come out. Come out and see. There's no substitute for seeing and feeling it and being in the midst of the pack, seeing the immediate impact it has on your baby and how much environmental change and environmental management can really steer behavior. And so I'd say give us a call and come on out. Look at our website and look at our Facebook and our reviews, but yeah, seeing how your baby reacts to our way of interacting, I think, is the best way.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. Once I took Sully there, I was like, oh, okay, there's something here. Very good. And I'll definitely be linking your Facebook, your Instagram, your website up into the show notes. So if anyone who's listening is interested in that, feel free to go look at those show notes and find out about these guys because they're amazing. They do really great stuff. And Matt, just to speak on what you do, for other dog trainers as well. You've never been shy or shysty about sharing what you do, and you're always very welcoming of me and me bringing my team to you, which actually I think I want to schedule another one of those field trips over to come see you guys because I actually have new trainers.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can use some learning from Matt and your crew. So yeah, thank you from the bottom of my heart, number one, for being with me today and spending some time with me, for being a fresh of breath air in the pet dog training industry, for being Michelle's boss also, because she's amazing, and I saw how much more she lit up when she started working with you guys. And yeah, just for being you all around and in general, you're a great guy, you're a great dog trainer, and I'm very honored to know you.
I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you so much. We're all on the same team.
Yeah, absolutely. Team
We're
dog.
all on the same team. We're all dogs first, right? So the more diverse and more varied our backgrounds and educations are, the better we can share and help. So yeah, I think there's no secret ingredient that needs to be hidden. This all needs to be shared because it takes a village. It takes the people that focus on puppies and giving them the good foundation. It takes people that are really experienced in the positive techniques to train most of the dogs, and then it takes people like us to help the dogs that don't fit all those models, right?
Yeah.
But we all have to work together to keep out the bad actors and to help parents not make the same kind of mistakes that I did coming up through the industry too.
We've all made mistakes. That's how we learned, right? I
Yep,
mean, even
absolutely.
in my podcast episodes, sometimes I have very contradicting titles in my earlier podcast episodes to now, because I think one good thing about any good professional is you're willing to learn, you're willing to adapt, you're willing to change your mind because the science proved itself there. So I think that's absolutely super important with anyone that you are, any dog parent that is looking to work with a pet professional. Hey, what's one thing that you've changed your mind on? Because if there's nothing, then you gotta maybe look somewhere else, because I guarantee you, we've all made mistakes.
That's right. I'm with you 100%. Well, this has been a blast. I've loved spending this time with you, and I look forward to doing it again. And if you have a collection of people out in San Antonio, right, that want to see and hear, I'd love to come out. We can maybe even load the pack in a van and come out and just kind of let people experience that kind of social parenting. I would love to do something like that.
Okay, cool. Let's
If I can invite myself in.
You are more than welcome to invite yourself in at any place, at any time. I mean, it's overdue that I have you over also, because I think when I saw you last, we were still in our old facility thinking about moving into our new facility, and we've been in the new facility for almost a year now. So it has been quite some time
Overdue.
since.
Yeah.
Well, very good, guys. Listeners, thank you guys so much for being with us today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Look out for those show notes and learn more about Matt and the Texas Dog Father and all the good stuff that he does. And we will catch you guys at the next episode. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Now, that might be the end of the episode, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Follow us on social media. I'd love to connect with you. We have quite a few social media platforms. For nutrition and holistic pet care tips, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Steph the Pro Dog Mom. You can find fun training tips on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Pup and Away SA. If you're in San Antonio and you want to bring your dog to us for boarding, training, socialization, and nutrition, come find us. But if you're not in San Antonio, we do training and nutrition sessions virtually. Yes, they can be just as effective, I promise. Please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast on whatever platform you listen on. And please, please, please share with a friend. The positive reinforcement of knowing people actually listen to this and find it valuable helps motivate me to keep on recording. We'll see you guys at the next episode.